two, whoo!
Welcome to Authenticity Lab, a podcast where we celebrate the journey of reconnecting with our authentic selves. I'm Dr. Kelsey Miles, a musician, songwriter, and also a chemistry professor. Each week, I share a new and real life story, and I break it down using none other than the scientific method. At the end of every episode, I invite you to run your own life experiment. And my hope with this podcast is to inspire you to live more boldly, lead a life of curiosity, and become who you truly are. In today's episode, we're talking about being very attached to a certain outcome and then having it taken away. And what do you do with that? Let's dive in. This story comes from a time in my life when I was a full-time musician traveling around, and I got the coolest gig. I thought this gig was going to launch my career. I was asked to open for Pat Benatar. Oh my gosh, I remember getting that call and just squealing about this opportunity. I thought this was going to be exactly what my career needed. In my head, I was seeing how this was going to drive all the rest of what I was going to do with my music. I thought this was the gold star that I needed. The call came from a talent agent that had met me actually at a show. So let me backtrack a little bit to show you why I thought this was like so perfect for me. It was exactly what I needed because I had so many odd synchronicities that just kind of lined up for me to get this gig. I had been playing shows in Florida it was right before COVID hit. Miss Rhodey, who's right underneath the camera there, she and I were in Florida around the Fort Myers area and playing shows. And then when we got back to Wisconsin, that was when COVID hit. But while I was there, I had met someone who was part of the planning committee for a festival it was in Illinois. And she gave me her business card, and then they set it up to where I was going to play at their festival. Well, COVID hit. They thought they were going to do the festival. I was supposed to open for Ricky Skaggs, a great songwriter, and the festival got canceled that summer. So they decided to invite me to the next summer, and it was a 4th of July festival. And when I played there, I met several talent agents that were there. And one of them connected with me later on, called me, and he asked me, would you like to open for Pat Benatar? Blew my mind. I had only met him because I had played a gig in Illinois at this festival, and I only got that festival gig because I was on tour playing bars in Florida and randomly ran into someone who was like, I've got this festival in Illinois. It was as if all the stars had aligned for me to get this big gig for me to open for Pat Benatar. Oh my gosh. I remember singing some of her songs when I was first starting with music in a band. She's just so incredible. So I got this call and I remember like squealing. I remember going to my neighbors in the condo that I lived in, and I remember they knew that I was a musician, and I didn't know them that well. They knew I was a musician, but I couldn't hold it in. I had to go tell some people, you know? Oh my gosh, the response that I got, it was so fun, just, like, screaming in the hallway with my neighbor who was she's, like, almost like, grandma-like to me, like, very protective, and it was really sweet just seeing her so excited for me, and I got to tell all my friends and everything. And the coolest part about this show was that it was gonna be in Ohio, which was pretty neat because my family lived in Ohio. And on top of that, it was literally, I think, 30 minutes away from my hometown, which is wild. It was so close to my hometown. And so it was in Troy, Ohio, was where the show was gonna be at Hobart Arena. And I decided to take my travel trailer. I think I was playing some shows in St. Louis or I forget where, but I was playing shows on my way to Ohio. Stopped in Ohio, Went to my parents' house. They had some friends over. I wanted to practice the show. So this is the night before the show. Mind you, I was nervous about it because this was the biggest show that I had played solo. I had played some big shows. I'd opened for like Whiskey Myers and the record company, and that was with my band. So this one was different. I was asked to not only open for Pat Benatar, but as a solo performer. And so I was a little nervous about this, and I remember really practicing my set and figuring out what I was gonna do. So the night before the show, I decided to give a little dress rehearsal show to my parents and some of their friends that came over. And I get done with it, and it was really fun, and it was so beautiful because I had not my parents hadn't seen me perform they much. They'd seen me perform one time before that, and that was back when I had just started and I was in a band, and they had never seen me really, really perform solo like that. So it was kind of fun. I parked on the outside of my parents' yard with my travel trailer, and I just set up all of my gear right outside of my trailer and, my PA and my piano and all the things I needed so that I could really do a dress rehearsal. And so it was essentially a nice little show for them that evening. So I got done with the practice, and I was feeling just so ready. I had been playing so many shows up to that point and really leaning more into my original music. I was gonna play a lot of originals. Actually, I was gonna play all originals, I think, at that set. I just remember really thinking this was it. This was gonna launch my career. This was exactly what I needed. I get done with the dress rehearsal and I get a phone call, and it's the talent agent. And he said, "I'm so sorry to tell you this, but Pat Benatar, they canceled the show. She's sick." Oh, man. And in my head, I was like, "Well, maybe they're gonna, like, reschedule. Maybe they'll reschedule for, like, next week or the week after." And, like, no, it's, like, kind of indefinitely canceled until she's got too many other tour dates she's gonna be doing, and he told me that when she'd come back to that venue that they would call me, but I have not gotten a call. Oh, man. My parents were there. We were all still there. I mean, just right after that dress rehearsal. The timing was impeccable. It was crazy. And I remember my mom being pretty just heartbroken because she was so excited about it too. And, oh, I was so bummed. I was so disappointed. I had really looked at that show was gonna be the next step. It was gonna be my big break. I really, really felt that. I felt that everything that had lined up was exactly what I needed to be, and I was gonna play that show, and then I was gonna get all these other opportunities. It was like my golden ticket, and it was so upsetting. I was so sad she got sick and the show got canceled. Really, at that moment, I had a choice of how I was going to perceive everything. Was I going to stay bummed or was I gonna keep moving forward? And I thank my mom for this. My mom has the most beautiful ability to find the silver lining in any event. I really think that I got that from her, and it's a beautiful gift that she's given me. And one of the things that came to mind was that I got to at least play a show for my parents. And when I first started as a musician, they didn't know what to do with me because I was a chemist, and they were worried that I wasn't gonna be able to support myself as a musician. And so they didn't understand how deep it ran for me. And so in a way, they didn't know how to support that part of my life. They knew how to support me as a chemist because it made more sense, made more logical sense to be a chemist. And so it was really cool to have driven all the way to Ohio to go rehearse in front of them and to show them what I'd been working on and to see them so excited about the show. Like, that interaction I had with them was just it really healed some of the conversations we had had before about them really wanting me to play it a little safer, and just get a chemistry job. And so that was really beautiful. And another thing that came from that, for example, I got better at writing contracts. I had to write this contract for the most money I'd ever asked for a solo gig. It was really a learning experience to kind of push myself there. And I really had to sit with that disappointment. I was so attached to that being the next break. It was almost as if I was like, "A- am I going the right path? Like, is this a door that shut in my face because I'm not supposed to be here for music?" Which couldn't have been further from the truth, but our minds go to places like that. Another really great thing that happened from me preparing for this show was all the friends that I got to be excited with. Honestly, that was so fun even talking about how excited we were. I had friends that helped me, like, prepare for with all the merchandise and everything. They helped me with my outfit of what I was gonna wear. They were actually on their way flying to Ohio for the show when it got canceled, so they all had to find a way back. They ended up, I forget where they hung out, maybe in Chicago, they got stopped. And it was really fun to spend time with my friends to, like, prepare for this big show. There were so many good things that came out of it. One of the things that I learned from this experience in particular was that this show required me to step up. I really had to rehearse. I really had to own the fact that I got invited to this show, to do this show. And I have struggled with self-confidence and feeling worthy for a lot of my life. It's still something I work on. And I remember feeling so surprised I got asked, but enough of me knew that I could do it, that it required me to step up. That opportunity required me to step up to really know that I could put on a really good show to open for Pat Benatar. It really made me step up. And so by the time I had done my dress rehearsal in Ohio, right before I got that call, I felt so prepared and so ready to play the show. Without even playing the show, I actually leveled up. That gold star that I thought that show was going to bring actually came through the journey. Now, I'll never know what would have happened if I had played that show, and maybe some other opportunities would have come up. But I do know that I gained so much out of just the journey of preparing for it that I only have good things to think about with that event. It didn't happen anywhere near like I thought it was going to. It just didn't happen. And as upsetting as that was, when I look back, I got so much out of that. How could I possibly view it anything less than perfect? Let's break this story down using the scientific method. Now, we know the first step of the scientific method is to ask a question. And often these questions aren't very conscious, they're kind of subconscious. And my question was, what do I do with this uncertain situation that feels like the rug was pulled out from underneath me and I'm super disappointed? How do I navigate this? And my hypothesis was that I could continue to be very disappointed and upset, and I assumed that was not gonna make me feel very good by doing it that way. I could also, try to change my perspective and just be grateful that I had the opportunity and try to shift my mindset a bit about that. So that's the path that I went. In my experiment, I was just trying to look at some of the silver lining around all of this. And of course, I was around my mom, so that helped me a lot during this. And I remember us having coffee and talking about the next morning and just talking about all the good things that had happened from this event. And when I look at the data of me really shifting my experiment, letting go, just like releasing the need to control that thing happening in my life because it didn't happen and it made me really disappointed. That that shift of perspective of just looking at some of the things that did happen and what can I be grateful for. And I know that that's a statement that's kind of funny. It's like, when you're really disappointed and someone's like, "Oh, what can you be grateful for?" And you just want to tell them to like leave you alone. But it really works. It really does work. And the analyzing that data of me shifting my perspective and looking at everything that had happened that expanded me, that made me level up, that I got to, visit my family in Ohio and show them what I'd been working on and play my new music and level up as a musician to really know, not only think, but know I was ready for that kind of a stadium show was such a learning experience for me. And the conclusion I drew was that I was able to stay steady even when the rug felt like it was pulled out right from underneath me. This thing I had grabbed onto, this was gonna be the break in my career that I needed. And I did not let it get me down. I learned, at least this is how I like to live my life. If something is for me, it will be for me. And if it's not for me, it will go away. Like that's just how it works. And I learned I can really trust that what thing is for me will happen. And the things that aren't for me will either keep showing up until I learn a lesson or they'll go away. And this just happened to not be for me. And there's really no more I need to think about that. I don't need to go down the route of, well, maybe I wasn't ready or I'm not good enough or whatever our brains like to do, our inner critic likes to do. I could just trust the fact that I got how cool that I got that call and how cool that I got to spend that time with my friends and family, gearing up for that show and the ways that it made me level up. And that was my conclusion, that I didn't need to grasp on so tightly to this destination. Maybe if I lighten up my grip to the destination, it'll give me a little more energy to pay attention to all the beautiful steps I get to take along the way. And this story also reminds me of my song, The Lighthouse. And much of what I'm talking about is this choice that we have to be steady. And the way that I find it easiest to be steady through, in this story, uncertainty. You really want something to happen and you think that you have it and it gets ripped away from you. What do you do with that? It's a choice. You can decide to be really bummed and disappointed and absolutely feel that way. And also, that's no fun to live like that for much longer. I realized I got so much out of the journey of preparing for the show and how much fun I had preparing for the show, and the fact I made it to Ohio to play for my parents and connect with them there and see their excitement about the show. All of it was so perfect. In the song The Lighthouse, I talk a lot about the light that we have inside of us. And much like a lighthouse, we have a light as well. And the light that's inside of us, it's not trying to be the waves. The light inside of us is steady. And so when we have disappointing things that happen, we still have that light. We can be disappointed and be up and down with the waves of uncertainty. Yet, there's still part of us that is smiling because it was all perfect. And you can look back and be really grateful for what that is. Let me read you a little bit of the lyrics from The Lighthouse. This is from the bridge of The Lighthouse. The lyrics say, "You'll remember when you see where the ocean and the shore meet. Dock your boat, place your feet on the shore. 'Cause the lighthouse will always," I said, "well, the lighthouse will always call you home."
You remember when you see where the ocean and the shore meet. Dock your boat and place your feet on the shore. 'Cause the lighthouse
that's exactly what this story did for me. It reminded me that I can stay steady through anything that's uncertain by focusing on those beautiful times all up until that disappointment when the show didn't even happen. I have so much to be grateful for. And as disappointed as I was that I didn't get to the destination of that show, I can't discount everything that did happen. I can stay steady through my thought process of that uncertain event. And in a way, no matter what we grasp onto, often it's the things that we really, really, really want to happen. And we take a hold so tightly that it has to happen that way in order for us to be happy. And that couldn't be further from the truth. You can be steady like the lighthouse on a shore. And no matter what happens, no matter how big the waves are, you could be shining the whole freaking time. Now, I'm not saying that I was perfectly steady throughout this. I was really disappointed. And at the same time, I couldn't help but look at all of the beautiful things that had happened. The thing that I took away from this experience the most was that if I could enjoy and really get a lot out of every step of my journey, because nothing's forever, everything changes. That's the one thing that's constant in this world. Things change. Nothing stays the same. And if you really lean into each step, you can just be present and get the most out of every step. Instead of looking at, well, once I get there, it will be better. And you can do that, and it usually leads to disappointment. I was holding on to that show and I got really disappointed. And when I was able to zoom out and see how many beautiful moments I had leading up to it, it's hard to be disappointed anymore. Guess what? It's time for your life experiment. What is that thing that you are holding on to? What's that event in your life that you're telling yourself, the moment I get there, and you have it beautifully painted in your head, you know exactly what it's going to look like, you know what you're going to feel like, you know what is exactly going to happen, so that way it's perfect. What is that thing? I'm going to invite you to think about shifting your perspective on that thing that you have in your mind about how it needs to be. Do you need to hold on so tightly to that vision being exactly like that? Maybe not. And is there a way that up until that happens, maybe you can just focus on every step up until that point? Can you enjoy more of the parts of the journey before you get there? Can you slowly start to let go of your grip on exactly what that vision looks like? Because more often than not, what we think is the perfect step for us isn't. I don't know how many times I've thought to myself, well, once I get there, I'll be happy. And I've never been, magically everything gets better when you get there. There's always something else. So, what's that thing that you're really hoping once you get there, everything will be better? That's where I'd like for you to think about and work on this week, shifting your perspective. Well, can I let that be different? One way I like to frame this in my head is I say to myself, I really want this thing to happen or better. And I leave it open ended, telling myself that that would be great. And if something even better came along, I'm open to it, trusting that the thing that's for you will show up for you. And then it lets me lean into every moment until I get there. And so instead of waiting for that thing to get there, waiting for you to be at that new vision that you have in your head, can I just focus on every step, the present moment of where I'm at? And can I really be grateful for everything that's along the journey? Because then you're just staying steady. No matter what uncertainty comes up, you will have enjoyed every step. Now that's a journey that would be fun to be on, and it can be yours. This episode is not just about not getting what you want and having the rug pulled out from under you. This is one of the many episodes I'll talk about uncertainty, which we all experience in our lives. And sometimes in our lives, we experience more than others. Uncertainty does not go away. And it's not that you want to live a life where you just stop caring. Caring is the most beautiful part. You want to be inspired. Throw that inspiration out in the air and say, that's where I'm going. And then, if you can, let go of it. Let it be what it needs to and go back to focusing on the right now, because that's all we have right now. And if you can lean into this moment today, right now, right after this podcast, you're going to have a better day. And that's going to lead you to the next day. No matter if you get there or not, you will have at least enjoyed every step. If you enjoyed this podcast, I would love if you share it with a friend of yours. Maybe someone who's going through an uncertain time, or someone who's really hoping for that next thing in their life and they're not sure what they're going to do if they don't get it. Maybe send this to them. Help them lighten up their perspective about it and open up their mind to just enjoying this present moment. Also, if anything comes up from you from this episode or a previous episode, I'd love if you could email me and tell me what's good. Tell me what's going on in your head. Tell me what life experiment you've run. Tell me how it worked out. My email is kelsey@kelseymiles.com. Also, if you're interested, this I Am Lyrical journey, I take you through 100 days of journaling through this. You listen to my last song on the journey. It's the Lighthouse. That's track 11. If you're interested, you can go to kelseymiles.com/100 days. That's 100 days. You have access to 100 days of inspirational emails from me. So once you get this journal, you can then get your daily emails as well. Thank you so much for listening to Authenticity Lab. I'm Dr. Miles, and I will see you next week with a new story and a new life experiment to help inspire you to live boldly, lead a life of curiosity, and keep being your most amazing, authentic self.
Yeah, that house will always call you.